Okay, so for anybody who has just signed on, welcome to the funding clinic for the Visual Arts Bursary Award. So I'm just going to say that the presentation today will be 45 minutes long. It's going to be co-presented by members of the visual arts team, and we're going to leave 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to go over some frequently asked questions and also answer some submitted questions as well. So my name is Rita Hines. I'm a visual arts officer at the Arts Council. And before we begin our presentation, I just want to run over a couple of items of housekeeping. So, okay. So before we begin, this information clinic is being recorded on Zoom, and it will be made available online after the session. We would invite you to write your questions into the Q&A chat box, which you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. So as they kind of come to you, a member of our team will be writing back to your questions as they're submitted into this chat box. And as I had mentioned, we're going to take 15 minutes at the end of our presentation to go over both the frequently asked questions, and then we're going to take a moment to stop recording, and we're going to try and read and answer some of the questions that have been submitted to this Q&A chat box as well. So we do have a very large attendance here today at our clinic, which is great, and thank you all for registering. So we're going to do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can. If we don't get to your questions in the seminar, we'll be sharing our contact information at the end of our presentation, and we really would invite you to follow up with us afterwards as well. And lastly, just there is to let you know, there is a live captioning option on Zoom. So if it's required, you can click the show captions at the bottom of your screen, and then you can select a language and click save, and you should have auto-generated captions. So it should look like something like that little graphic that's on the slide there. I'd also just like to make a brief note about our equality, diversity and inclusion policy that we have here at the Arts Council. So we're committed to offering equality of access, opportunity and outcomes to all potential applicants. And this is regardless of gender, sexual orientation, civil or family status, religion, age, disability, race, or membership of the traveller community or socioeconomic background. The Arts Council particularly welcomes applications that are representative of the diversity of Irish society, and this includes but isn't limited to any of the characteristics outlined above and or the initiatives that deliver equitable opportunities or outcomes to those involved. So thanks very much. I'm now going to hand you over to Claire Power, who's going to present the first half of our presentation. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rita, and thank you to everyone for coming this morning as well. So I'm sorry, my name is Claire Power and I'm the acting head of visual arts here at the Arts Council. And then today with my colleagues, we're going to take you through this information session on the Bursary Award Round 2 for 2024. As Rita said, we'll take about 45 minutes. We have 30 slides. We'll actually go through them quite quickly, making sure that we have kind of ample time at the end for questions and answers. So I'm going to take the first couple of parts, visual arts team, Visual Arts Bursary Award overview. So looking at the purpose of the award and kind of the real focus of it. And then my colleague Ailish, a manager in the visual arts team, is going to take the next four in terms of how to apply, support materials, top tips, any questions. And I suppose maybe importantly to say as well that most of the information that you will hear today is actually in the guidelines. So we've kind of structured this to take you through the process of making an application to the Arts Council Bursary Award. Of course, top tips won't be. So you might want to kind of pay close attention to that as well. Thank you. So our visual arts team, we are a team of 5. Rita, if you want to go on to the next slide. We're a team of 5 at the Arts Council. So as I said, I'm the acting head of visual arts. We have 2 managers on our team. Ailish Lavelle is here today, and Ailish manages the Bursary Award and a lot of the Artist Awards. Maeve O'Flaherty is the other manager in the team. Is not here today, but we're lucky or delighted to be joined as well by Rita Hines, who is the Visual Arts Officer. Rita joined us this year on the team, and Justine Harrington, who many of you might know already. And Justine is the primary point of contact for queries at the Arts Council around Artist Awards and funding as well. And Justine is always delighted to kind of answer your queries as well. We also work closely with our 2 advisors, our external advisors, Shauna Sullivan, who's our advisor and assessor for Artist Awards, and then Valerie Connor, who's our advisor and assessor for organisations. So the Bursary Award is one of the most important ways that we support artists here at the Arts Council. We're having this session today. The window for applications for the next round opened last Tuesday. So there's still a number of weeks to develop your application by the 20th of June. So as I was saying, bursary is one of the most important ways that we support artists at the Arts Council. And we know it's a really important award for artists too. Over the last 4 years, we've seen a 67% increase in applications. So between 2019 and 2023, our volumes and volume, I suppose the level of demand for bursary has gone up as well. And alongside that, we have seen an increase of 40% then in the number of applications that have been funded. So it's a very important award for artists. We know that. It is also a competitive award. So in terms of the purpose of bursary and I suppose its intent, it is very much a development award. So the objective is to support individual professional artists and curators to develop their practice. So very much the focus is on developing practice. It's a developmental award. It's there to provide artists or curators with the time and resources to think, research, reflect, and critically engage with their work or with your work. There's 2 strands to it. So the bursary is open to artists in strand 1 and then to independent professional curators in strand 2. So as an artist, what can you apply for? So under strand 1, you can apply for developing your artistic practice. And what this might look like, it could include support with time, buying your time, support, getting support with space, getting space, research facilities, training, mentoring, residencies. There can be an international dimension to that as well in terms of development and residencies. You could also apply to develop and resolve a specific body of work, to re-engage with your practice after a break, or to reevaluate your practice after a busy period of outcome-driven, more project-based work. So very much, again, just emphasising the purpose of bursary being around development of your practice. So very much on the development side, as opposed to we have other awards like the Project Award that is very kind of more project, well, obviously project-based, but more public-facing, I suppose. And we also very much welcome under strand 2 applications from professional curators. And what you can apply for here is developing your independent curatorial practice, developing or planning, researching, and resolving a body of work that's relevant to the progression of your independent curatorial practice, to develop partnerships, collaborations, opportunities with artists, organizations, and institutions, or to re-engage with your independent curatorial practice following a break. Also, you may want to reevaluate your practice, again, after, similar to artists, a continuous period of outcome-based project or deadline-driven project work. So there's a lot of similarities between, obviously, it's the same award, it's the same purpose of the award, it's development, there's overlaps and similarities between curators and artists, what you can apply for in terms of the focus, but it's very much around development. Thanks, Rita. So you can apply for one of 3 amounts. So these amounts are 10,000, 15,000 or 20,000. And I suppose which you choose to go for is very much down to you, down to your decision as the artist or the curator. And you might want to think about this in regard to the scale of what you're proposing in terms of the time that you want to allocate to it. And obviously the kind of focus, the development focus. So maybe this is an area or slide as well, just to kind of pay careful attention to as well. Your application, if you ask for more than the 20,000, if it's not for access costs, if you do ask for more than the 20,000 or less than the 10,000, your application will be deemed ineligible. So it's important to apply for either the 10, the 15 or the 20,000, with the exception if you're applying for additional access costs above the 20,000. And my colleague Ailish is going to go into that in more detail, how you can apply for additional access costs and what they're for. Also, just to say that if you apply for an amount that's outside of one of these bands, like 13,500, for example, or 19,500, you will be rounded down to the next nearest. So it's it's kind of an important, I suppose, piece to be aware of. And the emphasis of the Bursary Award is on practitioners buying time. So it's, again, very much the focus of the award is about buying your time and your resources, what you need to develop your practice. So it's really important that the amount that you request in your budget should reflect the value or the amount that you want to pay yourself for the time that you will spend on developing your practice as either an artist or a curator. And this can be up to 100% of the award, and that is fine. Okay. So there is one change to round two of the Bursary Award. The Arts Council, it manages several trust funds. And on this occasion, we will be able to offer one additional bursary, and that is thanks to the Martin Tunder Award Trust, and the maximum value of that bursary is up to 20,000. So essentially what it means is we have one additional bursary to offer in this round, which is really good. And it's there to support an artist of significant potential to develop their practice. There's nothing, I suppose, extra that you need to do, in consideration of this. There is a section on it in the guidelines. You apply for the bursary in the usual way. And if you are awarded this particular Martin Tunder Award, you would be contacted to see if you want to accept it ahead of any decision being made. So you just apply in the usual way for a bursary. So kind of coming to the end of my piece, so I just wanted to situate the work that all of our awards in the visual arts and across the Arts Council, all of our awards are informed by our policy and strategy. And the Arts Council's current strategy is making great artwork. It spans the 10 years of 2016 to 2025, so next year being the last year of it. And very much the artists and public engagement are kind of cornerstones of that policy. Sorry, that's jumped on there, but that's fine. So the artists and public engagement are cornerstones of that policy, and then our own visual arts policy will be very much aligned to that as well. And the visual arts, the artist is very much at the cornerstone of our art form, and hence why as well, obviously, bursary is really important in supporting artists. It's a really important award for us. To touch on then within the Arts Council, we have a number of supporting awards, not supporting awards, a number of policies that kind of help us to better deliver, on our policy and on our strategy. And these have been developed and launched over the last number of years. Particular ones maybe to draw your attention to are equality, human rights and diversity policy, kind of now known as, I suppose, equality, diversity and inclusion. And it commits to taking actions over the course of the years to deepen our understanding of the inequalities that exist and to develop ways to address these barriers. Our implementation plan around EDI was launched last year. So very much kind of echoing what Risha was saying at the beginning, that Bursary Award, it's open to artists of all backgrounds and of all demographics. So please read yourself into Bursary, don't read yourself out. We want to see a broad, we want to see we want to support the diversity of the arts in Ireland and welcome new applicants as well into that. The other policy maybe to pay attention to as well, if you're not already familiar with it, is paying the artists. So this is a policy that was launched by the Arts Council in I think it was in February 2020. And I suppose it is at the cornerstone of all that we do in the Arts Council as well, all the different awards and funding programmes. It's committed to improving the artists' living and working conditions. And it sets out best practice principles for the fair and equitable remuneration of artists. I think it's been a particularly empowering policy for artists as well, and why we don't, ascribe rates of pay. It very much sets out best practice principles, and hopefully, it does empower artists in terms of asking for fair and equitable pay for your work. And again, bringing that back to bursary, it's really important that you reflect that in how you ask for your fee, how you look to pay yourself for the work that you will undertake. So very much the bursary award, a large part of it is, and up to 100% is the artist's fee. So also policies that we have developed are the spatial policy, digital arts policy, and the climate action policy will be launched this year as well. So that is it for me. And I'm going to pass over to Ailish, who will kind of go into the kind of substantial part of making the application and the top tips part. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So as Claire mentioned, my name is Ailish Lavelle and I'm one of the visual arts support managers at the Arts Council, and I am managing the bursary. So I will go through over the next few slides how to apply. So we'll look at the nuts and bolts of the application process. So firstly, to start, you need to register with the Arts Council and get your unique ARN number. So that's the applicant reference number. So first of all, if you go to artscouncil.ie and search for online services, you'll go to this page that we can see on the slide here. So for the first time, when you register, you'll then retain your ARN number throughout your career and relationship with the Arts Council. So every time you go on, you input your ARN number and your password, which can be reset through your email. and you'll be able to download the application form through your online service. It's just worth noting that it takes up to 5 days to receive your your initial AORN number. So do apply in time. If you allow about 5 working days to receive that setup. So just as the deadline approaches, it's really good to get in advance of that as it gets more busy. So that's just a good thing to note. Thanks, Rita. So the Visual Arts Bursary Awards, as Claire mentioned earlier, the Arts Council make all the effort they can in order to provide reasonable accommodation for people with disability or access requirements who wish to submit an application or who have any support needs or difficulties in accessing the online services. So what I would suggest is that you contact Vanessa. She's very approachable and really helpful in getting you set up and on the right track for this. So some of your support needs can be talked through with Vanessa, and she'll be able to give you all the best advice about the amounts that you'll be able to apply for and how to do that. I would suggest getting in contact with her directly, and you'll be able to find her contact details online as well as there. Thanks, Rita. So the application guidelines then can be accessed through the website. So when you look through the available funding section, you can check by art form. If you select the visual artist or visual arts, it'll show you all the deadlines approaching. So if you click on the bursary, like we're talking about here, if you click on the bursary award, it'll bring you to the guidelines. If you then select the guidelines, as Rita's doing on the screen, it'll bring you then to a PDF document, which will, as you can see, the contents here in front of us. It looks a little daunting initially, but it's all numerical. And what is really good about it is it's cross-referenced with the application form. So you'll be able to find your way in it by following the numbers. And I mean that sincerely. It is really helpful. The guidelines initially feel quite daunting, but it's there to support your application and really to kind of signpost you into being able to apply with the objectives of the award and the priorities of it. So it's really trying to highlight the priorities, and it is there to support you. So initially, I would suggest it's really useful to download the guidelines and familiarize yourself with them. But then with your AORN number, go to the online services and download your application form. And once you've got your application form, then you can read the 2 documents side by side, as they are companion documents and will help immensely in the application process, especially if it's your first time making an application. So here are, this is actually screen grabs of the application form itself. So again, this is quite a long document, it's 28 pages. However, again, don't be thrown off by that. A lot of it is just necessary information and opt-in tick boxes where we're asking you information. So the beginning section is general information. And so this runs kind of under section 1 of the application. And that'll include things like your name and your AORN number, some background, kind of demographic information about gender, ethnicity, and also your career level. So quite a few people are curious, not sure about which career level to choose. It is self-selected, so it is what resonates most with you. So it goes through early, mid-career, established, but there is an option if you prefer not to say or that you're unsure. But it's entirely, I suppose, just to get a background sense, there is also then it moves on throughout the application form. Then section 2 is really about your proposal. So here we have 3 main questions that we're asking you. And as you can see, there's text boxes for each of the questions. It's very character sensitive. So some of the, you do have to be mindful there's not word count, it's character count sometimes. So it is useful to pay close attention to the word count on that. We can move on to the next slide, Rita, please. So I'll go through a few of the questions now that are in the application form, just to give you a better sense of the types of questions that you'll be asked. So the tell us about yourself question, this is in section 1, and this is part of the general information. So briefly describe who you are, outline your most recent artistic achievements. So as we can see, this is approximately 170 words. This is a biography to all intents and purposes, but also with CV highlights. So it's a balance between giving a sense of who you are and your level of experience, and also your recent achievements. I'd start with your most, I suppose, recent achievements, and then work your way backwards, because it is quite a short section. The summary of your proposal. This is in section 2. So this is a really important part of your application. It is very short. It is 3 bullet points. And normally people will write here the 3 main points that summarize their proposal, and then they can expand on them on the detail of your proposal. So it's really good to take some time to really think carefully about what you are applying for. What are the priorities of your needs? What way will you be applying to support your time? So this deserves quite a bit of attention. And also, if you are able to measure it alongside the objectives of the awards, that'll be really helpful to making sure that you're on track in terms of the priorities of this bursary award. The details then of your proposal. So this is where you get to describe in a little bit more detail. Again, it's 500 words, and there are the other opportunities in the application where you can detail the people involved in your application, perhaps, or any other details of your activities. So it's worth bearing in mind that you might not fit all of the details here, but this should cover all of your proposal activities in terms of the description of what you intend to do. It's really important, a key part of the proposal, and you should keep, this will help those assessing your application to understand the full scope of what it is that you want to do and why. It's a sort of a rationale, but also outlining your activities. It might include details such as practical explanations of the activities that you're proposing, your artistic goals and ambitions, and the wider context in which you're making the proposal, and any other information that you consider relevant. It's really important to include your development focus of your bursary here. This is where the assessor will be able to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve with your bursary application. Sometimes I think people describe their activities and forget to sort of talk about the thematic concerns of their work, or indeed the kind of critical or conceptual development of the work, or even just the exploratory nature of your work. And as it is a developmental award, it's really important that in this section here, this is your opportunity to really tease that out. So don't assume that assessors or the panelists will be familiar with your work. Do describe it as if somebody is coming fresh to their practice. Thanks, Rita. So again, the other questions that you'll come across in the application form. So this question, how does your application relate to the assessment criteria? So this is 150 words. And again, if you look back to the guidelines under the section of the priorities of the award and the objectives, this should give you a really good sense of how you are meeting those assessment criteria. So it's really useful. This is a perfect example of where the guidelines are really useful, and they are there to help you and support you in the writing of the application. Then the next section that we're going to highlight here is key activities for your proposal. So because the application process is quite short, or we have tried to keep it quite short, this is a good section where you can list out the key activities and the people related to your proposal. It assists us in assessing your proposal, provides the appropriate amount of time that you'd tend to spend on that. Sorry, so this is where you will outline the activities that you'll be involved in. And if you were to describe this in days, it's really helpful. It helps you kind of plan your time, but also it gives a good sense of what areas of focus will be in your application. So then the next section that we'll look at are the expenditure. So this is in section 3 of the application form, and it has its expenditure list, but also an income list, and then the amount that you're asking for the Arts Council from. Make sure that those 3 sections tally. So in the expenditure section, indicate the expenditure that you expect to incur related to your application. You're not required to have any costs other than a fee to yourself. As Claire mentioned already, it is totally okay to have in the full amount of the bursary to cover your time. But if you want to include other costs, you can set them out here. It's good to note that you don't need to provide details of personal living costs, rent, food, childcare. But if you wanted to do that as it relates to buying your time, that's totally fine as well. So the supporting materials. The main supporting materials that you were asked for include an artist CV, examples of your work. So you can provide up to 10 still images of your work with contextual information. So that's like the title, the materials, or any context that helps us describe what, helps us understand what it is that we can see in the image. You can also submit up to 3 links to either Vimeo or YouTube clips. And we suggest those clips are about 3 minutes long each. So if you have a longer video, I would suggest that either you make a shorter version or just be aware that it might not be the 3 minutes that you want highlighted. So it is worth doing that. Very important to note here that a link to your website, unfortunately, is not an eligible supporting material. YouTube links and Vimeo links are the only platforms that we suggest that you put a video documentation on. And other than that, to show examples of your work, really you need to put images into a document and upload them onto the system in order to be eligible for this award. So unfortunately, this is one area that quite often people unfortunately are ineligible because they don't submit the correct supporting material. We'd suggest that links to social media platforms, to individual applicants' websites will just not be accepted. They're not suitable, and you will need to create a document. And the best way to do this is to put all your supporting material into one document. We suggest creating a PDF, but that's not necessary. However, it does kind of pull all of the supporting material together. So just to run over it again for clarity, so you need an artist CV, examples of your work. So that can include both images and video or text if your work is text-based. You can provide supporting letters where relevant, a project plan or a budget if you feel it helps outline your proposal. So we can move on to the next slide, Rita, please. So just to suggest that here, some details to note. 10 good quality still images, including detailed images and installation shots. So it's really good if the selection of your images are in support and align with your proposal. So for example, if you're applying for a new piece of video work, but all of your supporting material is of paintings or installation work, we would suggest that you provide some supporting material that indicates what that video work will, the artistic quality or the direction of that work will be like. So again, just to show the maximum of 3 excerpts from moving image work with corresponding explanations. So the letters of support, we would suggest that mostly these are from, they're written from people who are supporting your application. So they're not letters of recommendation. So they're more letters of confirmation of details or activity that you're writing in your proposal. So they should submit, I suppose, details of their involvement, a biography, also outlining their expertise, accreditation and track record. So if you're applying for mentoring support, a confirmation letter from your mentor, as well as submitting their biography, accreditation or track record. That could include, for example, their CV. If you are applying to work with children or young people, a child protection policy should also be included if relevant. We can move on there, Rita. Thank you. So what happens in the application process? So after you apply, your application is acknowledged. It will be checked for eligibility. If it is eligible, it'll be passed to the assessment team, to our visual arts advisor. And then the applications are shortlisted by the assessors. The shortlisting applications then go to a peer panel for decisions. And the decisions then, depending on, I suppose, the number of applications we will receive, are announced within 12 to 15 weeks. So one thing to note there is to ensure that your activity won't start until about 3 or 4 months after the application process. If you leave it 4 months, just to be really clear, because you can't apply for activity that has already happened. But if you want to request your assessment text, you can do so. So in the instance where you were not shortlisted, you can contact the team and ask for your assessment text. I also suggest doing that in the case where you're successful as well. It's a really good learning curve, and it gives you good insight into where in your application that you're doing really well and where you could actually have room for improvement, perhaps. Thanks, Rita. So just to look over for a second what the assessors are looking for, your application will be assessed on 3 main areas. So the artistic quality of the proposal. So this is the ambition, the originality of the ideas and your work, the track record, and again, the idea. So this is really at the heart of any proposal, and it's worth spending time to articulate this clearly in your proposal, but also in taking the time to demonstrate your track record through your CV, making sure that all the details are on there, that you haven't left out anything, including residencies, or if your work is in any collection or any publications you've been involved in, any talks that you've given, all of the relevant information, including exhibitions. But then also it will be assessed with the objectives and priorities of the award. So your proposal will be assessed along the lines of how it meets these objectives and priorities, and they are quite clearly stated and laid out within the guidelines. So again, I would say, I know it feels kind of daunting to tackle these documents, but the guidelines are really useful in this regard. So making sure that you're writing your application with these priorities in mind, and because they will be assessed with the priorities in mind. So it's really useful to take the time to read through that. And then the feasibility of your proposal. This includes your budget, the time frame, collaborators, but it should be assessed depending on your what you choose to do with your time. So if you are paying yourself for the full amount of time, you can itemize that in days, and that helps outline how many days work that you'll be spending in your studio, for example, etc. So the feasibility is very much kind of on your past work as well, your collaborators, the budget, and what you propose to do. Thanks, Rita. So just to kind of maybe go over a few, I suppose, top tips in terms of, I guess, what is useful in making an application. So by planning your budget ahead, make sure that you include your artist fees. It's really good to itemize everything by the day to give a clear sense of it. If you're working with a mentor, we do suggest breaking down your costs and outlining what the program of mentoring will be. If, for example, it's working with a curatorial advisor, you can call it a curatorial advisor rather than a mentor. So it's just finding the right description for your collaborators and breaking down a little bit of detail around what it is that you'll be doing with that individual. So by including their biography, but also in a letter of confirmation from your collaborators or mentors to outline the work that you will do. So check the eligibility of the award and contact the visual arts team if you're unsure. We don't have the opportunity within this clinic to go over some of the more tricky details of what would be, but please feel free to contact us if you're unsure. Read the guidelines carefully. I've mentioned it a few times. Claire has outlined the objectives and priorities of the award. It's really important that you do use them. They're set out to be helpful, and they also are set out with kind of pathfinding in mind. They're supposed to guide the way and clearly articulate the priorities of the award. So it will take a little bit of time. And I would suggest taking the time to spend with the guidelines and the application form so that you're quite familiar with it. You know, it does take a couple of days to put together an application. Some people spend longer. I suppose it is a competitive award. So just be mindful that the more familiar you are with the process, the easier it will get. So one of the, I suppose, main pieces of advice is give yourself plenty of time to write and plan. And I think a great place to start is those 3 kind of points, the summary of your application. Because once you're clear about that in your own head, you can write and plan, and it makes it much easier. So to clearly communicate your ideas in plain English, do be ambitious, be compelling, be relevant, write with confidence and pride. We're all very interested in your success, and we want to support visual arts in all their guises. And we're really, I suppose, supportive of unique applications. It's about your practice and it's about your work. And we're really keen to hear from you on that, on your ideas. So rather than writing an application that you think you should write, write the application that you feel you need to write and the support that you're looking for. Remember, it is competitive. There are lots of people applying, but also there'll be lots of people reading your application. It is useful to get somebody to read over it who's unfamiliar with your work in a way or not from an arts background. They'll be able to help you look grammatically and whether it's clear. The artist vision, it's important to, I suppose, to articulate your ideas, and feasible and strong ideas will always shine through. So that's, I suppose, the main point of it. Art is at the center of this, your ideas and your practice, and it's about supporting you and buying the time to support your vision. And we're really here in terms of being able to, if we can give you any further advice or any details that help you in that process in any way, we'd love to do so. So do contact us. Thanks, Rita.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in here, Ailish. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to briefly share some useful resources and contacts. And then after that, I'm going to hand you back over to Ailish, who's going to go over a slide of frequently asked questions. Then I'm going to stop recording and we're going to read through some of the questions that have been submitted so far in the Q&A chat box. And thank you all for taking the time to write the questions as well. Okay, so some useful resources and contacts for follow-ups or for general queries. We have visual arts queries going to Justine Harrington, who's our visual arts assistant. So if there's anything following this presentation or throughout any stage in the application process that you're going to apply for, it's good to get in touch with Justine about the guidelines. Any access needs, as was mentioned by Ailish, is our access officer, Vanessa. So she'd be a great contact to go to. If you have technical queries about your online services account, or if you have any difficulty uploading anything, there's an email that you can send your technical queries to, and also a phone number. And then for other useful FAQs for show who's in what team, guidelines, information about upcoming awards, and just general Arts Council news and policies. And the Arts Council website is a really useful resource as well. We also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up to, and that also will show upcoming funding clinics like the one we're hosting today, and also news about the Arts Council's different initiatives as well. We also have a YouTube channel which shows different launches of policies that we have, and also the recorded sessions too that we go through with our clinics. So again, a really useful one if you want to go back to any other clinics. They should all be uploaded onto that YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm going to hand you back over to Ailish now. She's going to go over the slide of FAQs, and then we're going to stop recording and we're going to pull what we can from the Q&A chat box and time permitting, answer them. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, if we don't get to answer your question today, please do follow up with us, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rita. So we got a query earlier in advance, and so this person has written, I have already applied for an Agility Award. Can I also apply for a bursary this year? And the answer is yes. You may submit an application to the Agility Award and to one round. And to one round of the Visual Arts Bursary Award in 2024. Another query from an artist living in London. I'm currently living in London. Can I apply for a bursary? And again, unfortunately, you will not be eligible to apply for funding if you're not based in the Republic of Ireland. However, in saying that, we may consider your application if you're based outside the Republic of Ireland. However, your application would need to convince the Arts Council that your proposal would benefit the arts in the Republic of Ireland. Can I apply for a bursary if I'm still a student? So unfortunately, undergraduate students aren't eligible to apply for bursaries, but once you're graduated, you can apply. What activities can I apply for? You may apply for activities that support the development of your practice, as outlined. The cost of these activities in your application form, if you can outline them where possible, that's good. For example, collaborators and mentors fees, material costs, up to a maximum of 15% of the total amount requested. You can also include international residencies and travel costs. So it's totally fine if an international travel, residency, going to see your work are part of your proposal. You can indeed apply for those.
Okay, so we're going to stop our recording session now. And